Grand Central's unlikely hero. It was a typical bustling evening at Grand Central Station, the heart of New York City's transit network. The iconic concourse buzzed with life, its vast space alive with hurried footsteps and the cacophony of announcements echoing off the arched ceiling adorned with celestial murals. Commuters flowed like rivers, their paths weaving through the marble-floored expanse. The mingling scents of coffee, polished steel, and faint exhaust from the trains below created a sensory tapestry unique to the station. In the midst of the crowd stood Alexis Carter, a woman who commanded attention without trying. At 35, her presence exuded an understated power. Her sharp navy blazer and tailored skirt hinted at a polished professional life, while the leather satchel slung over her shoulder added a touch of sophistication. Every click of her heeled boots was deliberate, echoing with an air of purpose. Her natural curls framed a striking face, her sharp eyes scanning the throng of commuters as though she could see right through them. But Alexis wasn't here to enjoy the ambiance. Her movements were precise, her posture alert. She was scanning the crowd, her instincts honed by years in a job that required constant vigilance. Unbeknownst to the masses around her, she was no ordinary commuter. Alexis Carter was a CIA agent, and tonight she was on a mission. Not everyone saw her as a figure of grace and power. Two uniformed NYPD officers had taken notice of her, their gazes locking onto her like predators sizing up prey. Officer Mike Carter, tall and broad-shouldered, carried himself with an air of arrogance. His partner, Officer Ethan Walker, was younger and less certain, his hesitance evident in the way he fidgeted with his duty belt. Both had decided that Alexis Carter looked suspicious. "Ma'am," Mike called out, stepping directly into her path. His voice carried a false politeness, his smug grin betraying his condescension. "Mind stopping for a second? Routine check." Alexis halted, her expression calm but guarded. One brow arched slightly, her gaze locking onto the officer's face. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, her tone steady, professional. "You fit the description of someone we're looking for," Mike replied, his grin widening as he gestured for her to step aside. "Let's have some ID." Alexis's lips pressed into a thin line. "Description of what, exactly?" she asked, her voice measured but firm. Mike's smirk deepened. "We'll figure that out," he said dismissively. "Just step over here, ma'am." Her jaw tightened. Slowly, deliberately, she reached into her bag, her movements calculated to avoid escalation. Pulling out her ID, she handed it over, her gaze never wavering. Mike snatched the card without so much as a thank you, tilting it under the station's fluorescent lights. "Federal employee, huh?" he muttered, suspicion dripping from his tone. "Mind explaining what you're doing here?" Alexis folded her arms across her chest. "Official business," she replied coolly. "Is that a crime?" Walker shifted nervously, glancing between his partner and Alexis. "Maybe we should call this in," he mumbled, his voice uncertain. Mike waved him off dismissively. "Relax," he barked, turning his attention back to Alexis. "What's in the bag? Anything we should know about before we take a look?" Alexis's gaze hardened. Her irritation was subtle but unmistakable. "You don't want to do that," she said evenly. Mike's smirk widened, mistaking her composure for fear. "Oh, really?" he taunted. Without waiting for permission, he grabbed her bag and unzipped it, and that's when his world turned upside down. Inside, gleaming under the harsh lights, was a badge emblazoned with 3 letters that froze him in his tracks: CIA. Beside it, a Glock rested snugly, its matte black surface a stark reminder of who he was dealing with. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Mike's face drained of color, his confidence crumbling like a house of cards. Behind him, Walker took an instinctive step back, his eyes wide with shock. Mike," Walker stammered, his voice barely audible. She's CIA." Alexis calmly retrieved her bag, her movements deliberate and composed. Her sharp eyes locked onto Mike's, cold and unrelenting. "Now," she said, her voice slicing through the air like a blade. "Care to explain why you just harassed a federal agent?" Mike stuttered, his bravado evaporating. We thought you might be a threat," he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. "A threat?" Alexis echoed, her tone icy. "You thought a woman in heels was a threat? Or did you just assume I wouldn't fight back?" By now, the commotion had drawn the attention of nearby commuters. Phones were raised, cameras recording every second of the unfolding drama. Mike glanced nervously at the growing crowd, his arrogance replaced by visible panic. Alexis didn't miss a beat. She pulled out her phone, hit record, and pointed it at the officers. "Name and badge number," she demanded, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the onlookers. Walker, realizing the gravity of the situation, quickly complied. "Officer Ethan Walker, badge number 28,367, he said, his voice subdued. Alexis turned her camera to Mike, who hesitated before mumbling, "Officer Mike Carter, badge number 11,903. "Do you routinely harass women during your checks, Officer Carter?" Alexis asked sharply, her sarcasm razor sharp. "Let's see how well that excuse plays out when this goes public." By the next morning, the video was everywhere. News outlets exploded with headlines about the incident, shining a glaring spotlight on racial profiling and abuse of power. Public outrage surged, and the NYPD announced an immediate investigation into the officer's conduct. But Alexis wasn't done. Armed with her CIA connections, she arranged a meeting with the precinct captain. She didn't just present her case. She brought data, hard evidence of other misconduct cases uncovered by her agency. "This isn't just about me," she said firmly. "This is about accountability." The fallout was swift. Officer Mike Carter was suspended, pending further investigation. Walker, while reprimanded, reached out to Alexis privately. "I should have spoken up," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. Alexis listened but remained firm. "This isn't about apologies," she told him. "It's about ensuring it doesn't happen again." In the days that followed, Alexis returned to Grand Central Station, this time boarding her train without incident. As she settled into her seat, her phone buzzed with a message from her CIA supervisor. "Well done. Mission accomplished." Alexis smiled, her gaze drifting out the window as the train pulled away. She had turned a moment of injustice into a powerful lesson, proving that even in the face of prejudice, resilience and justice could prevail.